Now I can tell you, we can open it to the book of Isaiah. We can look in the book of Psalm, where they're also mentioned there. But I love the book of Job. Job, you got a guy, very first chapter, he is smitten with trials. He loses his wealth, his flocks. And if that's not bad enough, he loses his kids all the same day, just one after the other. And if that's not bad enough, he is then covered from the crown of his head to the bottom of his feet with boils. You remember in chapter 2, his wife, she looks at him. There he is. He's in misery. She just walks up and says, why don't you just curse God and die? But Job doesn't do that, does he? Because very soon after she made that foolish statement, Job's 3 friends come on the scene. Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar. Now, what you're going to read in the Bible for the next 25 chapters is this dialogue where these 3 friends are trying to pull out of him what they think he did. They assume he sinned and God's paying him back. So all throughout this, you'll see him say, you need to repent, man. What'd you do? Job's going, I didn't do anything. In fact, if you look at it in Job chapter 13, verse 22, Job actually requests to speak to God. He's angry. He wants to know, why is this happening? And he phrases it this way. He says, then you can speak and let me respond to you, or let me speak and you respond to me. Basically telling God, I don't care, you can go first or I'll go first. Well, in Job chapter 38, after Job makes his request to speak to God, we find these words. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you will answer me. God said, you wanted to talk? We're going to talk. Except I'm going to be the one doing all the talking. For the next 3 chapters, God deluges Job with question after question after question. If you have never read Job 38 through 40, go home tonight, read it. It is a humbling set of scriptures. He starts out by asking him, he says, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth, Job? Hey, Job, where's the dwelling place of light? Job, you see the eagle and the hawk, how do they fly? What about snow and hail, Job? How did I make those? Or Job, what about the behemoth? Job chapter 40, verse 15. Look now at the behemoth which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now his strength is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. What's a behemoth? That's not a word you see every day, is it? Somebody says, well, Brad, my Bible's got a little footnote here that says it's either an elephant or a hippopotamus. Well, let me remind you, your footnotes are not inspired, are they? But I'll go along with you for a minute. Let's actually use our brains and see what the description of this thing sounds like. It says, lo now his strength is in his loins, the force is in the navel of his belly. So obviously this is a creature that had a big belly, right? That guy have a big belly? Yep. That guy have a big belly? Yep. That guy have a big belly? Yep. Keep reading. Job chapter 40, verse 17. He moveth his tail like a cedar. Sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Now, when it's talking about a cedar here, it's going to be talking about some of the largest of trees. You say, Brad, how do you know that? Well, we do a little word study in the Bible. We learned that it was the cedars of Lebanon that were actually used to build the temple, right? Massive trees. So God here is saying it moves his tail like a cedar. All right? That begs me to ask you this question. That look like a cedar to anybody in the room? Not exactly. How about that? Not exactly. That's getting a whole lot closer, isn't it? Somebody says, but Brad, you got a problem. Because Job is a post-flood book. And by that I mean, we believe that the book of Job was actually one of the very first books of the Bible written. But the events of Job actually take place after the flood. here to tell us that God created man and dinosaurs on day 6. Yep. And then we've got record of this behemoth. And by the way, if you read chapter 41, you get another creature called a Leviathan. We get these two creatures in the book of Job. After the flood. Wouldn't that mean? Yep. They had to be on that boat. Now, before you pack me away in a nice rubber room, give me a minute to explain that. Let me ask you this question. Did God have to take adult animals on the boat? Did He take the juveniles? I mean, think about it. They take up less space, they eat less food, produce less waste. What was the purpose of the animals when they came off the ark? To replenish the earth, right? So it makes sense you want to have animals that have a long reproductive life ahead of them. Now, I don't mean to disrespect anybody in this room. I don't think there was any animals that got on that boat holding an AARP card. I don't think it happened. You ever seen what a dinosaur comes from? Eggs, right? Largest dinosaur egg we've ever discovered would fit very cleanly in both of my hands. So is it possible God allowed Noah to take a juvenile? I'll go ahead and tell you guys, I love the flood. I love it. I mean, I literally, about a year and a half ago, I went back. I studied it, enjoyed it. I went back and I poured myself into it for several months, researching it. Got all kinds of new material that I'm just kind of waiting to get out there. My wife says, she's like, you could go 10 hours without taking a breath on the flood. She's pretty close to right. I probably would need a little oxygen. That's a boat. Number one, that God knew the dimensions because He's the one that came up with the critters, right? 522 railroad boxcars is the conservative estimate of how big that thing is. So do I think they would fit? Yeah. Only question really remaining is what happened to them. Now, I wish I could stand up here and tell you they all died out because of, and we all go eat lunch. But the reality is we don't know for sure. And folks, listen to me. I don't have a problem looking everybody in this room in the eye saying, we don't know for sure. Because there's a lot of stuff we don't know for sure. And maybe we ought to humble ourselves occasionally and remind ourselves we're not God. Now, we do have theories. In fact, there was one actually published, couldn't believe it, about 2.5 to 3 months ago. Peer-reviewed study that said, and I'm going to try to say this as tactfully as I can, that the dinosaurs had emitted too much of their own methane and it killed them. I'll let you think about that. I brought with me 5 other theories. The one your kids will hear about is the asteroid. But really the asteroid poses more questions for me than it does solutions. How do you selectively kill stuff on the other side of the planet? Or they say an exploding star flooded the Earth with intense radiation. How about this? The Earth's climate became too warm, too cold, too dry, too wet for their health. Number 4, change in the dinosaurs' diet resulted in weakened eggshells that broke after being laid. Sad to say, number 5 is a scientific theory. Of accident plants, the dinosaurs died and disappeared, and they all died of constipation. I'll let you decide if that's a possible problem with them. Do I think I know what happened? Yeah, I do. Having literally just poured myself into it. I don't think anybody in this room, myself included, can appreciate what the earth was like when God declared it very good. Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. I don't think we really get that. And the reason we don't get it is because, number 1, we've never seen it. I do know that according to fossil record, the Sahara Desert used to be a rainforest. I know Antarctica has fruit trees and palm trees growing below the ice that used to be there. I know that this earth used to be basically a mantle of spring-like loveliness all over. And I think in that environment they thrive. And then I think God unleashed His fury on sin. in a worldwide flood that did change everything. It changed the climate, it changed the topography, it changed everything. It also kicked off an ice age, limiting how far they could roam. Folks, I think they were on the boat, and I think they came walking off that boat 371 days later, and they looked around and realized, we're not in Kansas anymore. And being large, cold-blooded creatures, they needed lots of vegetation. And suddenly, those little warm-blooded, fuzzy mammals, they started thriving. And folks, I believe the evidence I showed you today proves they made it for several thousand years post-flood. But I think eventually two things got it. Number one, changing climate after the flood. Number two, what has man always done to animals we fear? We hunt them, we kill them, right? I'm going to throw one piece of scripture at you, just for you to chew on as we go to lunch. You'll pardon the pun. Turn to Genesis chapter 1. Take a look at verse 29 and 30. You'll understand in a minute. 29, God said, see, I give you every herb that yields seed which is on the face of the earth. Every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. Prior to the flood, what were both man and animals? According to the Bible, they were vegetarian. Now that explains a lot. That explains how you can have dinosaurs in the same population with people without them eating them. They're vegetarian. It explains how you can get all the animals on the boat without them eating each other. They're all vegetarian. It also explains how you can get all of the food necessary on the boat because they're all vegetarian. Take a look at Genesis 9:3. Right after the flood. God making his promise to Noah. He says, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs. After the flood, what's he say? Fire for barbecue. You can eat meat. And folks, think about it. You're 20 years post-flood. Noah walks out and says, boys, go get us something to eat. So you got Shem and Jacob walk out, and they see a squirrel. And they see a possum. And they see a stegosaurus. And they're thinking, that little guy, he's small and greasy and wouldn't feed everybody. We'll leave that guy for the people in Arkansas. We could eat on that guy for a week. Folks, here's what I'm hoping you're beginning to see. When you truly look at the evidence, when you peel back all the propaganda and you set aside the textbook lies, what you're seeing is a creation account that speaks of the Creator. You're seeing evidence that points back to Him. This afternoon, we're going to ask the question, was Darwin wrong? And we're going to look very specifically at what some of the things our kids are getting in their textbooks, straight out of their textbooks. And we're going to ask the question, are you convicted? I'm going to tell you, that particular lesson is going to look a little bit differently at the Noah account than you probably ever looked at it before. I know everybody in here has heard the whole animals 2x2, etc. This afternoon, we're going to look at it in a way in which most of you have never considered. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Riley because we may extend lunch a little bit, but you still need to be back here on time.
We are going to extend lunch just a little bit until after 12. If we can be back as close to 1:15.